Have you seen this Apple River stabbing? This old guy stabbed a bunch of young people, including a teenager that died in what a lot of people would argue was self-defense. The jury disagreed and found him guilty. That doesn't mean much. A jury, literally, by definition, is 12 random-ass people of questionable intelligence. What's more interesting to me is how we form our opinions on what's self-defense and what's not self-defense. But what's more important than that is that we figure out how we could defend ourselves in this scenario without going to prison, and also what we could do to not get stabbed up. If you haven't seen the video, I think you should go watch it before you listen to me. If you have seen the video, comment down below whether or not you think it was self-defense and why. We're going to explore that why we think that way in this video. The first hurdle we got to get over is this whole jury verdict and what it actually means and doesn't mean. When I did the video about the guy who shot the YouTuber and was found not guilty, I said it was not self-defense, and everyone in the comments was like, well, the jury disagrees. First of all, a not guilty verdict means essentially nothing. That's one of the most meaningless things that has ever existed, is a not guilty verdict. Just because you're found not guilty doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime. And that's very basic, like 101, first day stuff in criminal justice. So if you don't understand that concept, I could see it be very difficult for someone to understand that a guilty verdict doesn't mean you did commit a crime. Hell, just because there's a law against something doesn't even make it illegal. That's how complicated this stuff is. So while a guilty verdict does carry a lot more weight than a not guilty verdict, it's still a verdict that was arrived at by 12 people who were too stupid to get out of jury duty. Juries are made up of people. Have you ever met people? Like, look down in the comments at the average person who has formed a very strong opinion about this topic based on nothing. And it's an important topic. We're talking life, death, and freedom at stake, and they formed extremely strong opinions based on very little information and no expertise. That's who you've got deciding your fate in a jury trial. So just because they found the guy guilty doesn't mean it wasn't self-defense. I don't believe that too many people actually hinge their opinion on a jury verdict. I'm reminded of my kids' basketball games, the other parents. Every time a foul is called on their kid, it's a bad call. And every time their kid draws a foul, it's a great call. Like, every time. You just like the decision that agrees with what you already think. But why do we think that? I'll give you one of my biases right now. I'm an old fart that carries weapons for self-defense. If a bunch of teenagers started pushing me and shoving me and knocked me down in a river, I'd probably come up stabbing too. And if you watch the video, that's exactly what happened. He's surrounded by multiple people who are younger, probably more fit than him. He's in water that's deep enough to drown in. He gets pushed down or thrown down or tripped down. It's unclear. We'll get to that in a minute. And then he's hit as he's trying to get up. I'm telling you right now, if you knock me down in the water and you and your friends are hitting me, I'm coming up stabbing. But that's not all that happened. We actually have to go back a little further. You know what this situation needs? A young lady who's not involved at all to come over here and get in the face of a much larger man. That always goes really well. This just occurred to me. Maybe you're interested in what I'm toting. It's that right there. Nothing super interesting or exotic. Well, maybe, I don't know, if you count the concealed carry tomahawk I carry. I'm just kidding. I don't actually concealed carry a tomahawk, but I could. This is not smart. You shouldn't do this. And this is the rub. We lose sight of these two during the video, and he says that she hit him first, because of course he does. And everyone else says that he hit her first. That should sort it out right there. If everybody agrees that he hit her first, then that's probably what happened, right? Maybe it's a little bit more compelling. Eyewitness testimony is extremely unreliable, and if everybody's sort of saying the same thing, that's meh. When I was a cop, one of the most stressful parts about investigating crimes was that everybody's lying. Everybody's lying. The suspect lies. The witnesses lie. The victims of crime lie, even when they don't need to. You'd be taking a report from a guy about his daughter's stolen bicycle, and you'd be like, yeah, pink, tassels on the handle, got it. Where was it at? And he'd be like, Under the carport. They came up under my carport and took it. It was out by the mailbox, but he thinks that that matters, or he thinks that I think that will matter, and he doesn't want to tell me that part, and he doesn't think it should matter. So he just tells me something else. People do that. Even people who are 100% the victims of a crime lie about it. Everybody lies. And it's difficult to get everybody at a scene to lie about the same thing, but it's not impossible, and sometimes it can happen without collusion. People lie for a couple of different reasons. A lot of those people at the scene knew her. A lot of the people at the scene would have identified more with her for various reasons. And then there's a weird thing that people do where they sort of lie based on what they think should be true. Back to the bicycle thing. Like maybe she hit him first, but they don't think that should matter, but they know that the court will think it matters, so they lie. And they feel sort of like righteous, or they feel justified in doing that. And some people maybe weren't lying. This happens a lot where if she hit him first, that draws their attention, then they're looking, and then he hits her and they're like, oh, he hit her first, because they can't hold in their brain that anything happened before what they saw, which we have to go back even further. All the people saying that they are very sure that it was self-defense are just conveniently ignoring this part, where this guy came up first. He ran up to them and grabbed their tube and probably made contact with them in some way, looking for a phone. This is how their interaction actually began. The old guy running across the river like a hippopotamus to rummage through some teenager's crotch area for a phone. I don't know the exact wording out there, but around here we'd call that party to the difficulty. For something to actually be self-defense, you need to not be the reason that it happened as much as possible. And there's degrees to that. Like if I'm like, hey, what are you looking at? And a guy starts shooting at me and I shoot back, that's probably self-defense. But if I like pushed that guy and said, hey, what are you looking at? And then he gets a stick and then I shoot him, then it gets muddier. If you're just minding your own business, standing there, not doing a thing, and four guys grab you, throw you down, hit you while you're underwater, I don't think it takes a great lawyer to argue self-defense. And in some jurisdictions, you wouldn't have even been charged. With the who punched who first part between him and the young lady, you are dealing with a force disparity issue and the optics of, stabbing a young lady as an adult man. Add in the fact that a lot of witnesses, including one of the witnesses that came with this guy, says that he hit her first. Getting reasonable doubt in there is pretty tricky. But when you run your dumbass across a river to a bunch of teenagers and start touching them, you'll definitely get destroyed in the court of public opinion, but you'll probably get destroyed in real court too, the one that actually matters. Strategically, tactically, morally, legally, ethically, he completely failed. He's a fucking idiot. What he should have done is said, I think those kids over there might have that phone. Hey, y'all seen a cell phone? Huh. All right. I think they have it. And yes, maybe they do. Maybe you really felt they do. I don't know exactly what was going on in this guy's mind, why he thought this was appropriate. You can see him stuck on stupid here when was being confronted and they're all making all this noise and hullabaloo. This could be a couple things. A lot of people think the response to stress is just fight or flight, but there's actually a bunch of reactions: fight, flight, freeze, posture, submit. A lot of people freeze. He could actually be under stress. He could actually be in fear for his life, even though he put himself in the situation. He could actually be experiencing that stress and just be frozen up. He could be hammered drunk, which, if you're tubing on the river on a beautiful day like this, that's not far-fetched. Or he could have bloodlust and he could have just wanted an excuse to stab a bunch of kids, and he thought, if I can goad a bunch of kids into attacking me, then I'd be legally justified in stabbing them. There are people that think that way. Those are those like, I wish a motherfucker would sort of people. He had this very specific, smug, shit-eating grin on his face that makes me believe that if you've ever seen people make this face, that's always what it's meant before. He was also, you didn't realize this, he was also working the knife out of his pocket before the fight started. But what could the kids have done different? A lot. I love a good victim blaming session. I love to blame victims because that's the only people that we have control over. If you're the victim of a crime, the only thing you had control over was yourself. And almost in every case, there's things that you could have done better. There's not too much that you can do in how this thing started. You need to get up and out of the tube and start creating distance, which is similar to the mistake that the guy made because they just remained in the same space. There's very few problems that can't be solved by closing your mouth and leaving. Like if you just go like this, it's very difficult to follow that up. Like usually the other person is just like, But people can't do that. Their ego and their pride won't let them. They want to have the last word. They want to make sure that person understands them. They want to understand what's going on. They want clarity. It's just stupid. It's pointless. If you're the old guy and you think the teenagers have your phone, but they're not going to tell you about it, do you think that what you're doing here is going to make that happen? And if you're the kids and you think that this guy's just a creeper weirdo and you don't have the phone, you think that that is helping your situation? That's the real self-defense. Just recognize when things aren't going to get better and shut your mouth and leave. That's the best self-defense technique that there is. Jumping up and down, getting each other's face, all the pushing and shoving and finger pointing. That's never ever made a situation better. So if you do things like that, you are trying to make the situation worse. And if you're trying to make the situation worse, it gets hard for anyone to believe that it's self-defense.